Good morning. How are you? Hope things are good. Have you ever had a morning when there were two things that you really wanted to do and you couldn't do both and you had to decide, which one am I going to do? I want to do that and I want to do that. And eventually you had to choose one. Not a terrible problem to have. Harder are those mornings when I want to do that and I want to do that. I can't do either. Might be raining, might be that both require a parent to go with you and or somebody else to go with you, and there isn't anybody else available, and so you can't do either. Makes us feel icky, just kind of sad. And there are other things that can make us feel just kind of things aren't working right. Sometimes that's because there's something we really, really, really want to do, and there's a long time that we can't do it, and we don't know when we'll get to do it. Can't go swimming at Big Bay in the winter, but we know that. There's ice. Water's cold. But we know come July, it'll be fine. End of July, at least. And we'll be able to do that. These days, there are things we'd like to do, but we have no idea when we're going to get to do them. Things we really, really want to do. But because of this disease that's out there around someplace, we don't know when we're going to be able to do that. And that feels really icky, really uncomfortable. Can make us feel in the pit of our stomach like, oh. Everybody has those times when things just don't feel right. And when we get really worried about how things don't feel right, when we're really worried that things are never going to be the same again, and I'm never going to be okay again. Now, adults feel like that. Kids feel like that sometimes. First thing, it's good to talk about it. It's good to say to ourselves and to others, I feel really icky that this isn't happening. When we know what it is and we say it to other people, they can also say, I also don't feel great about that. Sometimes they'll have a but. I don't feel great about that, but this is something else we can do. This is a different way we can approach that. Or I think at this point that is going to be able to happen. So it's good to share what we're worried about or upset about when we know what it is. Sometimes we just feel icky and we aren't sure why. At those times, it's good to just say to somebody we trust, I don't feel great. There's a pit in my stomach that just doesn't feel right. And they can help us with ways to let go of that pit in the stomach. Because we can, when we realize, when we can draw out how it feels. There's this, draw out what color it feels like in the pit of our stomach. And then we can say, okay, that's something that we can deal with. And there's a story of Jacob. We've been talking about Jacob. I talked about Jacob's ladder. On the night before he was going back home, when he didn't know what that was going to look like, Jacob spent the night by himself, and he tossed and he turned all night long. But he felt like there was somebody else there with him, that he was wrestling with somebody, and just putting all of his worry into this wrestling, and putting all of the mistakes he'd made before, and trying to understand where they were going to take him, into wrestling all night long. And in the morning, the person that he was wrestling with said, "I gotta go, it's morning. Not till you bless me." And he got a new name in that blessing. And it was, "You've wrestled with people and with God, and you've survived." So that's what your new name is. And Jacob was kind of a different person after that. He felt like he'd wrestled with God that night. And for me, that story says, when I can't sleep and I'm tossing and turning and worrying and wondering what that pit in my stomach is, God's there, and I can be in God's presence, worrying all that stuff through. And when I'm not alone worrying it through, much more hopeful, it's going to be okay if God's there with me. Because God knows what it is. And God knows when it's all going to work out. So I hope you're not wrestling with too much right now. But we're all wrestling with some stuff. We're all wishing and all hoping. And I hope there's somebody you can share with. And that you will tell them what it is that's on your mind. And even if you aren't sure what it is, you can always just sit and say, "God, here I am, and you know what's inside. So be here." So I hope this is a good week for you, and I hope that you've got good plans, and that there are days when you get to choose between those good plans. And that when you have to toss and turn, God's there with you, and you're okay.